You may start it?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna start it. I won't count down. We'll just go ahead and go. Okay, here we go.
All right.
You ready, Rich?
Yes. All right. Hey. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I know there are some who usually tune in from the UK. So it could be a good evening. Glad everyone could make it. We just have a few people live who are just coming in. And as usual, it's always good to have people live. Welcome to the June 13th community meeting of the Lynching Sites Project of Memphis. Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you again for joining us here virtually and in person. A couple of housekeeping things. Those who are here live and in person, I think everyone here is familiar with the space except for you. You know, the bathrooms are, and water fountains, things like that. You got to go and just, get up and go. It's totally fine. For those virtually, if you have questions for the speaker later on, you can submit them into chat. We have not mastered the audio video portion where it's really, we could hear you, but barely if you speak into the Zoom. So it would be best if you just send your question into the Q&A and we'll read it from there. Now we'd like to have just 3 minutes of meditative time, practice of ours to help center ourselves, focus on our mission. You can think about God, you can think about whatever you wish to think about that helps center you. Think about what's going on in the world and what we can do as a community to alleviate this stressful situation all over. I'm going to start for 3 minutes now. right, thank you. All right, we have a few announcements for the community before we get to our speaker, Alice Faye Duncan. This Saturday, in commemoration of Juneteenth, we have a couple of volunteering opportunities for those who wish it. We are volunteering at 3 locations: Lemoyne College, St. James AME Church, and Trinity CME Church to take part in their Juneteenth celebrations. And basically, our volunteer efforts would be these churches in Lemoyne would give us a table, and we would have our banner, and we will have literature and there to talk about the work of Lynching Sites Project. And we'll likely have a sign-up sheet for people to sign up for our newsletter and things like that. We did it last year. It was really, really great. We had a number of volunteers. We were in 3 locations last year as well. One of them was Lemoyne College. The other was Slave Haven. And I believe there was a third, but it's escaping me right now. Maybe it was just 2. It was just 2. Okay, Slave Haven and Lemoyne College last year. For Lemoyne College, the times are 12 to 4. St. James AME is 10 to 4, and Trinity CME is also 12 to 4. For those who are here in person, if you'd like to sign up, you can see Jessica Oriens, and you can sign up with her. For those who are virtual, you can reach out to Jessica at
jessorians@gmail.com.
Jessica or Jess?
JESS.
Okay.
OR.
What if they send it to?
Jessica@lynchingsitesmem.org.
Right, Jessica at lynchingsitesmem.org. I think people will know that lynchingsitesmem.org. So you can send her a message to sign up. They're 2-hour stints, basically.
If you can do, we'll take whatever you can.
Yes, hey, you want to be there all day, we'll take that. That'll be awesome. Okay. Next up, we have a new board member for the Lynching Sites Project. We had an outgoing board member, that was Dr. Ernestine Jenkins, professor at University of Memphis, and also curating an exhibit at the Dixon Art Gallery. Was it earlier this year, late last year, and I think it might still be going on. It was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful installation. If you guys have an opportunity to go see it, it's part 1 of 3, I believe. So more to come on that. She has to step down, and we have filled that spot with our own Kelsey Lampkin. So those in the LSP community know Kelsey's work and know that she is a welcome addition to the board. We can't wait for her to start. Next up, last before I give it over to our speaker, Ms. Duncan, is the L Persons Memorial Service that was 2 weeks ago now, I believe. It was virtually, it was broadcast virtually, and we do have it recorded, and you can access that by going online to our website, lynchingsitesmem.org. And it was a very, very nice time. It was cloudy, it's a bit cloudy. I don't think it rained, luckily. And I thought it was really nice. It went very, very well. I don't know if anyone here would like to say a few words about it. Randy.
Yeah, I want to say that I was so grateful to hear Miles Franklin, who had been a graduate student at Central High. But what was really amazing for me was both of his parents were here, as well as his grandmother. And his grandmother really spoke passionately. That to me was the highlight for me, was his grandmother.
And his grandmother talked about the importance of teaching this history to our students and to anyone who doesn't know. And of course, you know, what Tennessee is going through now with the recent laws that have been passed, making that somewhat difficult on our educators. So anyone else want to say anything about it that might have attended? So it's a really great time. If you didn't get a chance to check it out, we did record it. It's on our website. Okay, now, without further ado, Alice Faye Duncan is a national board educator who writes books for children. She taught in the Memphis schools for 30 years. Memory is her motivation. She writes to help young learners remember forgotten moments from American history. Her newest titles include Opal Lee, and what it means to be free and evicted, the struggle for the right to vote. I do have to say that we actually have the book that's on your screen to the right, Memphis, Martin, and the Mountaintops, for our daughters on their bookshelf. So I encourage those who don't have it to go ahead and get it. Her September release later on this year is Yellow Dog Blues, a blues fable about love, loss, and good times in the Mississippi Delta. And you can visit her at AliceFayeDuncan.com. So tonight, she'll be presenting material from several of her books, including Evicted, The Struggle for the Right to Vote. And she will discuss the lynching of Thomas Brooks in Fayette County and the subsequent voting intimidation and suppression leading to the voter rights movement in Fayette County, Tennessee, that started in 1959. So without further ado, Ms. Alice Faye Duncan, welcome, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Richard. And so now what I'm going to do, precious people, is I'm going to now work with my screen here so that I can I want to see you all, and then, but anyways, I'm gonna have to now fix that screen. So now I can't see anything but the screen. Okay. And so just give me good energy, good vibes, and we will have a good time. Well, welcome to what's today, June 13th. We are now embarking upon the first week before we get to our second annual national holiday for Juneteenth. So I would not be a good speaker, wouldn't be a good African-American speaker, certainly, if I did not highlight Juneteenth before we begin my actual talk. And so what I want to say is, if you can see my new book here, Opaline and What It Means to Be Free. That book is available now. It's a picture book for children. It includes a red punch recipe. But this book, I created it. It's a biography of Opaline, the grandmother that many of you know from being on the news, because her one-woman campaign helped lead us to Juneteenth as a national holiday. And so in my interview with her, in order to write that book, that biography on her, there are 5 things that Opaline said to me that are very important that we remember as we celebrate Juneteenth. And I'm going to read those here so that I don't mess them up and that I get her language correct. Opaline says that first and foremost, when we are celebrating Juneteenth, no matter who you are, she wants us to remember that Juneteenth, make these notes. If y'all got paper and pencil, yeah. If you got paper and pencil, get some paper and pencil, write some notes down, because that'll keep you up in case that sleepy demon come on you. It'll keep you up because you're writing notes, right? Because you got to pay attention, right? All right. So these 5 things that Opaline said are very important. She said the first thing we need to remember about Juneteenth as we celebrate it with our families and our children is that Juneteenth is a time of reflection. Before you get to the barbecue and the red punch, before you get to the pound cake, before you get to the Frankie Beverly and the music, before you get to all of that, before you get to the fellowship and the good times, right? Juneteenth is a time of reflection, a time to look back at the struggles that you have survived and to celebrate the accomplishments that you have made despite the struggle, and to reflect on the future of what you can do right now in your community, with your family, with your friends, with those beyond your community, that you can, what can you do to make this world a better place for you and me? Sounds like a lyric. I know it's a song. It says, make this world a better place for you and me, because I know it's a song. Y'all know that song. I can't remember. Iris Love. That's the song. Give me the title before we leave. Okay. So that's the first thing. Juneteenth is a time of reflection. The second important thing that Opal Lee wants us to remember, that Juneteenth is a day of music and praise. Praise the Lord. So Juneteenth is a time of celebration to praise. Yes, bring the music, bring the bands, bring the choirs, bring the troubadours and the instruments. Yes, Juneteenth is a time of praise. Third thing that Opal Lee wants us to remember is that Juneteenth is a jamboree of feasting and fellowship. Yes. Bring your grandmother's recipes. Yes, bring your favorite recipes. Yes, gather your friends around. Make sure that it's multi-generational, right? And I'm gonna tell you why. Because Opal Lee also says the fourth thing, that Juneteenth is a time for us to listen to our elders. So let me tell you this, you ain't got no Juneteenth celebration if it's not multi-generational. And let me say this also. Number 5, she says that no matter who you are, Juneteenth is a unifier that represents freedom. Listen to me again. She said, Juneteenth is a unifier that represents freedom. So I don't care who you are. If you believe in freedom and you cannot rest, Ella Baker, Juneteenth is a day of celebration for you, no matter who you are. And so if this were 1865, Juneteenth would just be Black folks. But this is now 2022, 2022, right? Did I say that right? Right. So then that means that Juneteenth is a unifier. Because guess what? We now have a new revelation. If one person is not free, ain't nobody free. If one group of people are not free, then ain't nobody free, right? And so that means then Juneteenth ain't no Juneteenth celebration if it ain't multi-generational. And there is no Juneteenth celebration if it is not a variety and a diversity of communities coming together to celebrate freedom and to contemplate and reflect on how we can continue democracy, preserve democracy, make America available, justice, democracy, equality for one and all. Okay, so that's what I want you to know about Juneteenth. So if you white, don't tell me you can't celebrate Juneteenth. If you Mexican, don't tell me you can't celebrate Juneteenth, because the grandmother of Juneteenth, Opal Lee, said Juneteenth, no matter who you are, Juneteenth is a unifier that celebrates freedom. So if you believe in freedom, Juneteenth is a holiday for you. Okay, so that's what I want to say about Juneteenth. You can get my book, Opal Lee, wherever, like this Zoom thing is like wherever books are sold, right? Wherever books are sold, you can get Opal Lee and What It Means to Be Free. Now, I want to talk about the good stuff. I want to edify you with information and with history about a local history that's important to you because you live in Memphis. And Memphis is important to you. And how can you celebrate home if you don't know the history of home? How can you exalt home and be proud of where you come from if you don't know the great people and the great history that has happened in the space where you were born, right? And so today I want to talk about someone who many of us have read about in the news, and certainly you have seen his photographs during your childhood. And now I'm going to make my face disappear again because now I can't see this thing. Okay, so now my face is gone. Okay, all right. And so I want to talk about Ernest Withers, the famous photographer, born and raised in Memphis, went to Manassas High School, was in World War II, and for 60 years, from 1940 to the 2000s, he used his camera to document the Black side. He called it. That's what I got from him. I interviewed him several times before he died. He said that he was the photographer for the Black side of Memphis. And so our lecture today is called Memphis History is American History, Ernest Withers and the Civil Rights Movement, 1955 through 1968. Any smart people here know why I chose those years, 1955 through 1968? I chose those years because we know that the civil rights movement continues, but in the history books and oftentimes in the mind of young children, they believe that the civil rights movement happened when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. And in 1968, they consider it ended when Dr. King was assassinated. But we know the movement continues. And we also know because of Dr. Clenora Weems, who in 1993 came up with a new hypothesis. She was like, y'all talking about Rosa Parks started the civil rights movement. She said, no, no, no. She says Rosa Parks was inspired by the death of the sacrificial lamb, and his name was Emmett Till. So I call this also, the subtitle of our program is From Money to Memphis. So this is what I like to say. There's power in photography, right? Photography, in fact, has impacted history in many cases in a very positive way. All right. And what some of you may not know is that Ernest Withers, for all intents and purposes, if Dr. Clenora Weems says that it was Emmett Till whose lynching or death, assassination, his murder in the American Civil Rights Movement, then come on, all my Memphis people, born and raised in Memphis, you can tell anybody that the person, the photographer, the historian, the journalist to take the first picture of the American Civil Rights Movement was Ernest Withers. Ask me how. Ask me why. Because Ernest Withers is the only photographer who captured the trial of Emmett Till. He was told not to use his camera. He was told not to bring his camera, but he was able to hide his camera in his coat, I suppose, and he takes the picture of Mose Wright, Emmett Till's uncle, accusing a white man in the court of law of murdering his Black nephew. Some would say never in the South, in the court, in a Southern court, had any Black man anywhere stood in a court and accused a white man of nothing, even if the white man was guilty. Who took that first picture? It was Ernest Withers. I say here, 1955, Ernest Withers inspired the American Civil Rights Movement. Ernest Withers took the first picture in 1955. He also, we could say, theoretically, we could say he took the last picture in 1968. But I can unequivocally say that Ernest Withers produced the first book about the tragic death of Emmett Till, and that book cost $1. He did it on mimeograph paper, and it was called The Complete Photo Story of the Till Murder for $1. I would pay much more than $1 if I could get an original copy of that. Oh, and so let me say this too. When Mose Wright was in that court, and the judge or somebody asked, like, who abducted your nephew? And Mose Wright said, there he is. And he pointed to the culprits there. All right. And so here's another thing people don't know. You see this picture here? This is the picture that is in every history book. I have grown up reading history books, seeing this picture of Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King on their first Alabama integrated bus, or their first integrated Alabama bus. Now, mind you, they had traveled to the North so that they had ridden on integrated buses before, but never in the South had they ridden on an integrated bus. And so this is the morning after the Supreme Court rules that segregation on city buses is now against the law. And so King and Abernathy, this is their first integrated bus in the South. So Ernest Withers took this picture. Ernest Withers took this picture. And how did Ernest Withers take it? So I asked Mr. Withers, I said, Mr. Withers, how were you able to capture this picture? And he says, Alex Neal, who was the editor of the Tri-State Defender. I think, okay, this is just, let me bird walk here. I really think, Alex Neal died a tragic death. He was hit in Little Rock, and I think it ended up giving him Parkinson's or something. So he died early, like in his 50s. But I think Ernest Withers held some kind of grudge against Alex Neal because he would invite Ernest to go on these pilgrimages to take these pictures, but I don't think the pay was so very good. So anyways, Mr. Withers told me that he was able to get this photograph because Alex Neal had drafted him to come and take pictures for the Tri-State. And so he drove there with him, and they got up early that morning to see what was happening on the buses. And it just so happened that Ernest Withers is on the same bus stop that Martin Luther King is on. And so he's allowed, he's able, by a fortuitous incident, he is able to capture this picture. And I'm not even sure that the picture is attributed to Ernest Withers often, but I know I've grown up my whole life since I've been reading about the civil rights movement and Montgomery. I've seen this picture, and it gave me just great pride and confidence in, like, the place I'm from, like Memphis. I come from a very important place of history. Memphis is a very important place of history. And I was made to feel very proud of that when I learned that photograph was Withers. And so I say, Withers took the first picture of Dr. King riding his first integrated bus in Montgomery. It was 1956. That was December 1956. Okay, so now I'm working on another book, shameless plug, working on another book called Coretta's Journey, where I am speaking about Coretta Scott King, patriarchy, protest, and prophecy. And it's a children's book. They let me do that. Praise the Lord. And so what I want to say is that Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King, it was a cosmic love. It was a cosmic relationship. They had this thing between them where they talked about a cosmic companionship. And they always said that the cosmic companion on your road of destiny is Jesus Christ, Jesus the Christ, the Holy Spirit, right? But I want to say that their union was a cosmic connection that was beyond the natural world, because Coretta had already been poised and all her family had already been terrorized by racial terror before she even met Martin. And she had already met Bayard Rustin and had considered herself a pacifist and had gone to progressive campaigns and rallies long before she met Martin. And she was already talking about a language of dismantling racism and dismantling poverty and dismantling war, like long before she met Martin. And so it was cosmic relationship. It was destiny. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And it also happened in Montgomery, which is where Ernest Withers took those first pictures. All right. And so now we know that the first part of the movement starts with Emmett Till. We know that Emmett Till's murder leads to the Montgomery bus boycott. We know that the Montgomery bus boycott introduces the nation and the world to a young man named Martin and a young woman named Coretta. And so now they are on the national stage. And what are they on the national stage to do? What are they on the national stage for? Well, Ella Baker said, look, Martin, young man, because she like 20, 30 years older than him. She was like, you need to take this moment. All these people are like, all calling your name and they know you and you're getting all this notoriety and you speak real good and you look real good and you got all these educated degrees. She was like, look, I think you need to make you up a organization. And so with her inspiration, they make the SCLC, right? And then she was like, and so I think what you need to do is you need to use this organization to let's just dismantle segregation all over the freaking nation. Why don't we do that? And Martin was like, yeah, old lady, I think that sounds real good. I think I need to take this opportunity and I need to capitalize on this moment, on this zeitgeist moment, on this destiny moment, right? And so he does that. And so as a part of the SCLC, they decide, look, we're gonna integrate buses, we're gonna give folks jobs, we're gonna integrate jobs, we're gonna integrate housing, we're gonna integrate education, and we're gonna integrate voting. I mean, it's like why we added, and since Ella Baker has spoken to the king and the king, right? And so one of the things that they decide that they're going to do with the LCLC is they're going to tackle voting too. So, but now here's the thing, according to the law at that time, everybody had the right to vote. But just because everybody had the right to vote don't mean that everybody was being unhindered in the voting process, okay? Memphis is unique because of Crump and Black Republicans and the Black vote, but everybody wasn't voting just Black. Everybody Black was not voting in the nation just because they had that right on the books. So what was happening, particularly in the South and close to us in Fayette County, which is 50 miles, I think, east. I'm not real good with directions, whatever, but 50 miles east from us. While Black folks in Memphis were voting because they had the Crump machine that was like, I don't know what's the word, prostituting their vote, pilfering their vote. I don't know what you call it. Okay. I would have to like think about that to get the right word. But because of that, in the 50s, Black folks were voting. Okay. But 50 miles up the road, Black folks in Fayette County, which was an agriculture environment. Now, Fayette County was like the third largest region, third largest county in terms of land, right, in the state. But it was the third poorest county in the nation because you had 75% Black people that were living as sharecroppers, and then that other 30% were the landowners, right? And so you say, my question was, when Ernest Withers introduced me to Tent City, because it was Ernest Withers who even craned my attention toward Tent City. My question was, why is it that the Negroes were not voting if they 70%, right? What was wrong? What was happening? And so you had voter intimidation and you had voter suppression. But then when I kept doing my research, I kept looking a little further, and this is what I discovered. In Haywood County and Fayette County, which are sort of close, they're neighbors right up there. They had a majority of Black people. They had minority white people. Most of the white folks were the landowners, but also in that area, you had a history of racial terror, where if any Black person stepped out of line, did anything that white folks considered uppity, self-advancing, they would be, they would suffer consequences of fire, some kind of racial terror, fire, rocks, stones, bricks, and lynching. Okay. And so specifically, the reason that the Blacks in Fayette never rock the boat is because of this history of racial terror. It was just sort of like, we know this far and no further. We know that we are like, it was just in the DNA, it was in the subconsciousness that here, our white folk will allow us to do this, and we could only go so far, right? So if we want to stay here in this area and we want to, this is where our family is and we want to stay here with our family, we know that we can only go so far. We can only advance so much. And if we want to advance beyond what they allow, then we know we got to leave here, right? One of the reasons why you got William Herbert Brewster, he left Fayette County when he was very young because he knew he could not advance there. And so one of the greatest hauntings that happens in Fayette County in 1915 is the ghost of Thomas, it's my poem called The Ghost of Thomas Brooks, but it is the lynching of Thomas Brooks. And so what they say about Thomas Brooks is, the newspapers say, this is a newspaper clipping, in fact, from the Commercial Appeal. It says, Negro taken from officers, lynched, mob near Somerville, enact summary vengeance, no legal action taken. Affair was a quiet one. Did y'all see that the affair was a quiet one? You know, just like a pleasant Sunday, even, at a church picnic, just a little quiet affair, right? So that came from a Commercial Appeal. In fact, I was supposed to have the exact date with me, and I printed it. It's somewhere here in the house, but I don't have it. Okay, sorry, I apologize. But it is from the Commercial Appeal, April 1915. And so I wrote a poem, and I made a movie. I made like a short movie, but Jessica says that you can't really hear the movie. And so I'm just going to read. I'm going to put it on mute, and I'm going to let you watch the movie, but I'm also going to read it, because what I want you to see the artwork that Charlie Palmer did in my book. This poem comes from my book about Tent City and the voting rights movement that is called Evicted. So what I'm going to do for you is I'm now going to read the poem called The Ghost of Thomas Brooks. Thomas Brooks, again, was lynched in 1915. Oh, all right. Let me tell you what they accused him of. They accused him of killing a white landowner and the white landowner's helper. Now, I was not able to determine from the papers if the helper was a black man or if the helper was a white man, but it could have been a white man or a black man, the helper. But I do know that the landowner was a white man. And so this is my poem, The Ghost of Thomas Brooks. My talk ain't polished. Listen anyway. This is my body, battered and bruised. See my bulging eye? Call me Tom Brooks, here and not here. I am the wind. Click, click. A crowd of grinning white folks snap my picture. Kodak Brownie cameras cost $2. It is April 1915. My cracked black boots and broken black limbs dangle from the trestle of a railroad bridge in Somerville. I killed a rich white farmer and his helper, they say. They say so much that ain't true. Click, click. Pictures tell the story as buzzing white children chirp in glee. They is so happy to miss a day of school and dance in circles at the hanging of a Negro. Me. My story ain't polished. Read it anyway. Study my broken body like a book. Remember my blues, here and not here. I am wind, rain, and beloved sun. Colored folk was the majority in Fayette County, Tennessee. We stayed on the land and picked cotton after slavery days. We was cheated paupers in plantation shacks, sharecroppers. Colored men did not vote in 1915 or beyond, not in Fayette County. My muted tongue and broken black body is a message down the dusty tracks of time. What is the lesson for my wounded soul? Go make some white folk mad, or do good, like open a grocery. Learn yourself to read, or cast your ballot as a first-class citizen. It ain't no secret. They will kill you. The Ghost of Thomas Brooks. And so what we find in that poem, and what I'm trying to share with children, is that you were just relegated to a certain type of existence in 1915, and lynching and racial terror was very much a part of life, and so it did keep you in your place. And that is why, even though you had a majority in 1959, like 1915 was like decades from 1959, but that haunting of that terror and the passing down of generation and generation of like, child, look, you do this, you can't do this. Like walk on that step, don't look white folks in the eye. All of these rituals, this negotiation that blacks and whites had worked out was being passed down the age, of the ages. And so, it was like voting. A Negro was just trying to make a life and send their child to the little segregated school and have a Christmas and a birthday and a wedding anniversary, But so, and this is the environment that haunted the people in Fayette County when we get to 1959. So in 1959, several things are happening, right? School desegregation. Well, first of all, 1954, the Brown versus Brown has happened. And so there has been, segregation in schools has been, abolished, but it was moving slow across the South. So even though it was not legal in the law, segregation, it was still moving slow across the South to happen, to actualize. And voting rights, my Lord, in the South. I mean, like you had the right in the books, but wasn't nobody even studying it because of racial terror, unless you lived in some place like Memphis where it had been negotiated how the Black folks was going to vote, who they was going to vote for, right? And so 1959, 50 miles away from Memphis, what happens? God has a sense of humor. Let's go back to 1940. What happened in 1940? In Somerville in 1940, a Black man, this is the rumor, a Black man and a white man were dating the same Black washwoman. That's the rumor, okay? The Black man, the white man got I guess intimidated by the Black man. I don't know. But anyways, he figured that it was time for the Black man to be removed from the picture. So he is deputized, I think they would say. He is deputized. He brings 100 other white men to him to go and lynch the Black man who was dating his Black girlfriend. He brings 100. That's what they said in Jet Magazine. They said 100 white men showed up at the man's house. He was like a jackleg Black preacher who also was a sharecropper, okay, who had a family and children of his own, okay? So when the mob gets here to this Black preacher's house, he has his gun, all the 100 men, they're on top of the smokehouse, everything, right? They are shooting at him. His children are in the house. He decides he's going to be brave. He takes his gun and he runs out of the house where all these men, this mob of white men, are there to shoot him, lynch him, right? Y'all, he survives and runs 50 miles to Memphis after being shot. He's shot several times, but he runs 50 miles to Memphis, okay? And when he runs to Memphis, he leaves Memphis and he settles in East St. Louis. But this is what happens. The mob, while they did not shoot the preacher, his name was Burton Dotson, while they did not shoot the preacher in their pursuit of lynching him, they shot one of their white mob friends. And what do? Burton Dotson was running the opposite direction of the man that was shot. But what they do is they accuse Burton Dotson of murdering their mob friend. And so Burton Dotson knows he's got to run away. He cannot come back to Fayette County. And so for always, it is Burton Dotson murdered this man, and Burton Dotson is going to have to pay. So 18 years later, that I hadn't been able to figure out. I don't know if 18 years later, Burton Dotson thought all the white folks had forgotten about him. So he comes back to Fayette County and maybe visits some family, or maybe 18 years later, some white folks found out he was in St. Louis. Whatever the case, 18 years later, 1958, because that happened in 1940, the mob pursued Burton Dotson in 1940. 18 years later, 1958, they find out where Burton Dotson is in East Tennessee. They get a court martial. They bring him back to Fayette County to be tried for murder for a man he did not kill. He did not kill the man. He was running the opposite direction of the man. He was trying to keep from getting killed. Okay. He did not kill the man, but he has to have a court trial for murder. Now, this is 1959. Now, this is a year later after he's been captured. The court date happens in 59. And in the city of Memphis, there is a Black lawyer named J.F. Estes. J.F. Estes has been studying the Martin Luther King playbook of how to be a famous Black preacher. All right. And I'm doing these things for entertainment, but it's all factual and it is all history. Okay. So J.F. Estes says, look, I'm coming to Fayette County. He's going to be the first Black lawyer to ever try a case in Fayette County. He's going to be the first Black lawyer to step his foot in Fayette County. And so he comes there and and the Black people, the Black sharecroppers in Fayette County, they're like, we want to sit on the jury because this is our friend and we know he didn't kill that man and we want to make sure that justice is served. And J.F. Estes said, look, Black folks, justice ain't gonna get served today because first of all, you can't sit on this jury. And why can't you sit on the jury? Because ain't none of y'all registered. Y'all can't sit on this jury because ain't none of y'all registered. It's like less than like 30 Black people on the voting registration list in 1959 in Fayette County. And 30 might be like too large of a number. So John McFerrin, a farmer, his best friend, Hartman Jameson, some more people, they get together, some more Black men, they get together and they say, okay, this is going to be the last trial where we not going to be registered because we're going to all go register now. And they start for the very first time in American history. These Black farmers from Fayette County start the very first grassroots voters registration drive. Had never been no Black voters registration drive. Nowhere, not in the South. It had not been. Wasn't no need for one, I suppose, because the terror had everybody fixed. And so it is that voters registration drive that inspires all these sharecroppers to leave the plantation and go to the Somerville courthouse, which you have probably passed by if you live in Oakland, got relatives in Oakland up in that way, up around those parts. Those folks, those Black folks said, we leaving the plantation today on Wednesday. Wednesday was registration day. They said, we ain't working today, boss. We going to register. Boss said, what? So you going where? Where you going? Say you what? So we's going to register, boss. Mm-hmm. That made the boss nervous. All the bosses, all the landowners made them nervous because guess what else was happening? In America, the mechanization of farms was happening all over the South. But in Fayette County, they said, we don't want to mechanize because this cheap labor that we got means we can make more money. So no white farmers really in Fayette County were trying to be like, sharecroppers in Mississippi that was like moving toward mechanization because they said it's cheaper for us to keep them than for us to. And then anyway, we ain't got no money. Y'all ain't subsidized us yet for no farm equipment. So a white farmer would have to sacrifice to mechanize, right? To get machines, right? So we say, we'll just keep the Negroes. They're illiterate. Most of the sharecroppers were illiterate. This is the only life they've known. What you see, you will be. That's all they had seen. But when they said we finna now go vote, and voting is power, and that's what all this gerrymandering about right now is about, because voting is power. If you are voting to your interest, and you are voting for politicians who are working for your interest, that means you can get you some free health care. That means you can keep you some voting rights. That means you can get you some living wage. So don't nobody want the Negro or self-aware white people or self-aware brown people or self-aware Asian people. Don't nobody want educated democracy to vote if it means that the status quo or the power structure is going to lose its power, because then you will vote for laws that bring equity to the table, right? And so the White Citizens Council in Fayette County said the Negroes can't vote. So this is what we're going to do to make life uncomfortable. After y'all work this season, they let them work all the up until like November of 1960. But for every Black person that's done voted, not voted, because they weren't voted, but every Black person who had registered in Fayette County, they made a list of names. They called it the blacklist. They made a list of names and they evicted those. If you did not have a big-hearted boss man, or if you did not have a boss man that believed in equity, then those Black folks who were registered and had those names on those registration rolls, they were evicted. And that is where you get the tent city, because in tent city, because in Fayette County, there was a farmer who had like 200 acres of land. His name was Shepherd Tolles. And he said, you know what? We can pitch army tents. And that's what you see right here. You can pitch army tents on my property, and you can live here until we work this voters registration thing out, or until you find somewhere else to stay, or until you move. But I'm not charging you rent. You can stay here. And here's a sad thing, y'all. Some of these army tents that you see pitched in this field were more hospitable, were more livable, were more pleasant than the sharecropping shacks that the people had left. But then this is where it really gets interesting. And this is where Ernest Withers comes to play. Ernest Withers had been hired by J.F. Estes. Remember I told you the Black preacher that wanted to be the next Martin Luther King? J.F. Estes said, all right, I need Ernest Withers, because he lived in Memphis. He said, Ernest, I need you come to Fayette County and take pictures of the people. Take pictures of the people in Tent City. Take pictures of the people in the voting line, because then we can use these pictures, put them in the Black Press, put them in Tri-State Defender, put them in the Black World, Memphis World, right? And wherever there's a Black press, Pittsburgh Courier, Chicago Defender, wherever there's a Black press, Jet, Ebony, we can use this as marketing, because then we can get the people to donate to the folks. So guess what? Ella Baker saw those pictures. She saw Ernest Withers pictures. Ella Baker told Martin Luther King, one of our first projects, Doc, she said, hey, Doc, because she, at the time, she was like the executive director, right? She was running things. So the men, patriarchy men got mad. They was like, boot her. She can't run nothing no more around here. But anyway, but before, when she had some power over the young man, Martin, she said, Martin, we need to send $800 to these people in Fayette County, because they doing something, baby. She said, they doing something powerful down there in that Fayette County. Ella Baker also went to SNCC, told all the young people, I don't care what y'all doing. Y'all need to consider, have you considered my servant Joe? Y'all need to consider my servants down here in Fayette County. They doing something. People like John Lewis, young man in SNCC, people like James Foreman, a young man that was SNCC. James Foreman, really, I do believe, I'm not sure, but I think it was James Foreman who really, because he was living with the people in Fayette County. I think he went down there, was living with them, and he saw, like J.F. Estes, he saw an opportunity that what they were doing was so powerful, it was something that could be replicated in other parts of the South. So he told John Lewis, then when he got to working with SNCC, James Foreman, did y'all know he used to teach third grade? He used to teach third grade in Chicago. But anyways, and so he took that, James Foreman took what he saw these people in Fayette County doing, he took it to SNCC. Where did SNCC take it? SNCC took it to the Deep South. They found Fannie Lou Hamer in the process. Then they went on and took it to Alabama. Alabama led us to John Lewis on that Edmund Pettus Bridge. Edmund Pettus Bridge and the horses and the evil of the deputies walking on that bridge. the evilness of that thing is what led us to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So when you tell people you from Fayette County, or you tell people you from Tennessee, you tell the people that Tennessee, that Black poor farmers, illiterate farmers in Tennessee are the reason that we have the 1965 Civil Rights Act. But now here is the befuddlement that we're in. Who gonna sacrifice now to give us a 2022 Voting Rights Act? Who gonna sacrifice their job? Who gonna live in a tent now? Who gonna say, well, you know what? I'm just gonna strike or protest, and it don't matter if I don't pay these credit card bills right now. But because the people didn't have nothing, the people could make the sacrifice. But right now, because all y'all got something, in order to make a sacrifice to speak up for what's right, you're going to really be having a sacrifice. It's going to be about houses, and it's going to be about land. Because I just don't really know that if we have what it takes to make those sacrifices now. But that's why I write these stories, so that the young people can understand, baby, if you're going to preserve democracy, you're going to have to make a sacrifice. My dad used to say, no cross, no crown. Ain't going to be no crown without no sacrifice. Do you hear me with your good ear? So I want you to look at the faces of these people here. This is my friend, Mr. James Jameson, who allowed me to come to Fayette County, and he brought all his family albums so I could see his mom and his daddy, Hartman Jameson, Minnie Jameson. Minnie Jameson lost her job. Look, I just retired. I left my job as a retired person with a pension. His mama had her job taken away from her just because in Somerville, just because she was trying to vote. That's Mary Williams down there at the bottom. She was the first mother who lived in the tents on Shepherd Toll's property. She was the first mother to have a baby in the tents. Some of her nieces and nephews, they was like, we can't stay. They just left and moved to Chicago. And then right there, that's Laverne Tolles. Laverne Tolles was Shepherd Toll's son, who was also a sharecropper at the time. He did not have to live in the tents because John McFerrin's brother let him rent out. You see that, let him rent out a house, because the McFerrin family, they owned a lot of property. So he let him rent out a house. And Laverne Tolles, who was around, he's my mom's age, I think, 85, 86. He's now bought the house from the McFerrins, but he's still, and this, of course, it's now renovated and built up, and it's a new house, right? But he still lives in that house. He lives on the same land that he moved to when he was evicted from Tent City. And then I want to show you this story, because I know y'all's time is short, so I'm gonna make this fast now. I want to show you this story right here. Reese Hunter, the lady holding that card. Ernest Withers took this card. A lot of people see it at the National Civil Rights Museum. A lot of people love this picture. It's a Black woman with gold teeth raising up her very first voter's registration card. I looked her up because I wanted to interview her for my book. But when I looked up Reese Hunter on Ancestry.com, I discovered Reese Hunter only lived, she got a first registration card there in 1960. By 1963, Reese Hunter was dead from cancer. So I just praise the Lord for her, because for the last 3 years of her life, because of the sacrifice that she made, she was a first-class citizen with voting rights. And she was voting because by 1966 in Fayette County, you had 6 Black magistrates. Now, mind you, the magistrates might as well been Barack Obama. And I say that because it was monumental to have 6 Black magistrates. The voting registration drive started in 1960. By 1966, they had 6 Black magistrates. That was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. Memphis didn't even have no black city councilman. And so like they had superseded Memphis didn't even have no black city councilman to 1968 when King was assassinated, right? And so I say when you are remembering your American history, because Black history is American history, when you are remembering your American history, do not forget about West Tennessee. Do not forget about Memphis. Do not forget about
in the county called Fayette.
That's Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger was also responsible for promoting the tent city struggle because he made a song about it. Okay, so now I'm almost over. All right, so we've been tracking Ernest Withers. We've been tracking Ernest Withers from 1955. We've been tracking him from 1956, and then we tracked him when he came to Somerville, Fayette County, take those pictures in 59, 1960. By 1966, you've got the Voting Rights Act. Black folks in Fayette County are voting, even though they had stuffed ballots. They tried to steal in fact, they had stole one election, but and probably they had stole a lot of them. But by 1966, you had that law in place where it was being monitored and they couldn't steal so easily, right? All right. So then 1967, that was the great year that I was born. Not a lot of 1967 really doesn't get a lot of play and press in the news or in the books. But then we come to 1968, right? And we know that the Vietnam War is happening. We know that King has been vilified in 1968 because now he went to Riverside Church and with encouragement for Coretta, who was whispering in his ear in the evening over dinner, was saying, Martin, look, when you gonna speak to the people about Vietnam? Martin, look, we got all these Black boys going to Vietnam. Martin, look, with them doing the war in Vietnam, they taking money from education. Martin, look, what you finna do now, Martin? What you finna do now? Martin, you need to talk about the Vietnam War. Martin, these Black boys dying. Martin, would you please speak up about the Vietnam War? Do that for your wife, would you please, Martin? Please. Martin did. He was vilified. He said, oh, Coretta, I told you they was going to hate me. You got me speaking about this war, but I still got to speak about it anyway. And he did. And then, come on now, Martin Luther King, really, okay, we talk about patriarchy. Martin Luther King owes his courage to God, but he owes his inspiration to Black women because Ella Baker inspired him to create SCLC. Coretta is the one that inspired him to speak up about the war. And then, why y'all think that Martin Luther King was on the crusade for economic justice? Do you think that it was just, he came up with this idea himself? In reality, most of his ideas were not original. In reality, most of his ideas came from someone else, but he was the one that had the voice. He was the one that had the charisma. He was the one that was endowed with the power to galvanize the people and to unite them under the banner of the cause that he had taken to. So can you say Miriam Wright Edelman? This is King's Trinity to me. Ella, Coretta, Miriam Wright Edelman. Miriam Wright Edelman said she was living in Jackson, Mississippi, and she said, you know what? She said, whoo, the Negroes down here in Jackson, Lord Jesus, we got this poverty. We got these children living in huts. They ain't got no food. They ain't got no sustenance. Folks walking around here with no shoes. And we living in America, one of the richest countries in the world. She went to Washington to see the Kennedy brother, Robert. She said, I'm gonna swing on by here. I'm gonna go to Atlanta, go see my friend Martin and Andrew and all these other preachers in Atlanta, see what they're doing and see if I can inspire them to do something for the poor people in Mississippi. Because this don't make no sense. Looking like third world Africa, right here in Mount Bayou in the Delta. So when she goes to Martin and say, Martin, we got to do something about these economics. Martin said, you know what? I think that because right now in 68, 67, Martin, he's being vilified because of the war, and he needs something that can put him back where he was, right? He needs something where he can galvanize the people and get them moving, right? Right. And so he's like, economics is it. Economics and the war, right? Right. Economics is it. Because it was poor people suffering in the migrant workers were suffering in the West. Poor people suffering in Appalachia. Poor people were suffering in Chicago. He tried to do some in Chicago, Lord, and that just didn't work out. He tried to like bring that movement to the urban environment in 67. That didn't work out. Lawndale, interesting fact. Lawndale. I always think that's so interesting. Anyways, my mom understand why that's interesting to me. That it was in Lawndale where it didn't work out for King. But and so he says, yes, Mary Wright Elderman, you are right. I'm gonna get on this economics thing. And so when he does, he says, you know why that's so brilliant? He said, because economics ain't got no color to it. It ain't about like black folks on the bus. It ain't about coffee at a counter. It ain't about a bus ticket. It's about, can every American purchase groceries? Can every American send their child to college? Can every American purchase a home? And the answer was no, because a lot of Americans were full-time workers on starvation pay, just like the sanitation worker. So when James, come on, y'all know, James, somebody help me. You know the James I'm looking for. I talk about him in my book, the man that was a preacher at seminary. Come on, Almella.
Can you hear?
Lawson.
Lawson. So come on now. So when James Lawson comes to Martin and says, Martin, we need you to be a voice for these. We got the strategy. He said, look, we don't need your strategy, Martin. We got Henry Starks as our strategist. We got Henry Jackson as our strategist. They got me. I done been to all the good schools. I can help them strategize. We don't need your strategy, Martin. We got that. This is a local movement. What we need is your notoriety. What we need is your face. What we need is a figurehead that will move this movement from being in the commercial appeal and move it to being in the New York Times, so that just like them kids that was on that Edmund Pettus Bridge, this will become a national movement, a national concern. Martin says, look, I'm there because it matches what I want to do, which is about bringing a living wage to all Americans. So I'm going to be there for you and the sanitation workers who were mostly, illiterate sharecroppers from the Mississippi Delta, because the Mississippi Delta had been what, Fayette County? Mechanized. Am I saying that right? They had machines. All right. And so he says, I'm coming. And then Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, Ralph Abernathy said, why are you wasting your time with them poor Negroes down there? We need to be going to Africa. We need to be going somewhere. Why are you going and worrying about that? No. Don't you go down. Martin said, nope. This my new movement, economics. The green, the mean green. Everybody need it in their life. What does the Ecclesiastes say? Money solve all your problems, right? That's what Ecclesiastes say. And he said, I'm going to help them get it. We live in America, right? And that's why King, my hypothesis, that's why King had to die. Because King, think about it. King was coming with the poor people's campaign. He was coming with that campaign for a living wage in 1968. He was bringing people from Appalachia. He was bringing people from the West. He was bringing people from all over America. It wasn't about race. It wasn't about black folks. It was about economics. It wasn't about white and black. It was about green. It was about money. And think about it. Every single movement that King had put his voice to has succeeded. The kids in SNCC didn't succeed until Martin came and add his voice to the movement. Montgomery, the people in Montgomery had been trying to like tackle civil rights forever and a day, but then nothing happened until King had added his voice to the movement. A. Philip Randolph had been trying to do a Million Man March in across DC since the 1940s, but he couldn't do it until Martin came and added his dynamic charisma, his energy, his voice, that thing that God created him for, until he added it to the movement. So everybody in the status quo, Johnson, anybody with sense knew that if King was able to galvanize Black people, white people, brown people, all the people making starvation pay on full-time jobs, if he was able to galvanize all these workers and send them to Washington, it wasn't going to be no 250,000 people. That's 250,000, 300,000 was on the march on Washington. It was going to be the first million man woman march, because the people was going to come. He had the spirit to do it. He was the dynamic person to do it. And so he had to die. He had to die right then and there with the quickness. He had to go. 50 years later, and we still ain't got a living wage, because there has not been one person who could galvanize people like that. And another thing too, you then had the economics for people, I guess, sort of improved. And what happens when you're comfortable? When you're comfortable, you're less inclined to sacrifice. You're less because you got to pay them credit card bills. Hey, so that's my advice to y'all. Get rid of them credit card bills so we can bring democracy back to America. That's my advice.
I have a question for you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
okay, yes.
Ernest Withers earlier. Did you get a chance to meet you? You interviewed him.
Okay, so here. So let me do. Okay. So anyways, I'm just like having fun. So I'm sorry that I'm taking advantage of this captive audience. But let me read this poem, and then we're gonna come to a close. Okay. Oh, so talking about Ernest Withers, because I've talked about maybe that. This picture right here is of the march on the Bill Street riot before it happens. That is Martin Luther King, some of his handlers, and then you've got Henry Logan Starks there. Henry Logan Starks was my childhood preacher. Yes, I talked to Ernest Withers. Me and Ernest Withers used to go, I used to take Ernest Withers to lunch, and he was very wonderful. He was very kind to me. Anyways, I met Ernest Withers. Actually, I've always known Ernest Withers from being in the community, but I met him like in February 2006 at the funeral of Dr. T.W. Northcross. And so that's when Ernest Withers and I became friends. Okay. So anyways, I want to say this poem and then we're almost over. You can mute yourselves, or anyways, I just want you to repeat after me. This is a good school teacher or a good church, however you like it. Okay, so repeat after me. The king is dead.
The king is dead.
Not long ago, there lived a king. He did not sleep in a castle. He did not wear a crown. He did not rule a royal court. Or ride in chariots. The king marched in the streets. He lived to help the poor. He lived for peace and love. Hate. Kill the king. The king is dead. What? What will the people do? What will the people do? What will you do? Because you understand, King is dead. Harriet Tubman dead. George Washington Carver dead. Alexander Hamilton dead. Rosa Parks dead. Who else? Jefferson dead. Thomas Jefferson dead. Who? Andrew Jackson dead. Praise God, he's dead. You know, anybody that you have, Frederick Douglass is dead, Ralph Bunche dead, Ralph Ellison dead, Toni Morrison dead. I'm sad about that. Toni Morrison is dead. And so all these people that we revere, admire, Ella Baker is dead. Who were freedom fight, Fannie Lou Hamer is dead. They ain't here. They ain't here. But who's here? Say it. I'm here. I don't hear you. Say it. I'm here.
I'm here.
You are here. You are here to make the sacrifice. You know, it's some scripture in the Bible. Almel will have to give it to you. But it's some scripture in the Bible about, like, Paul is talking about Jesus and how about Jesus has left his portion. Jesus has left a portion of sacrifice to be made by Paul. So that's what Martin has done. That's what Rosa has done. There is now a portion of sacrifice left for you to make. Coretta Scott King said it this way. She says that, freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. So my mama's generation, my mama did not march. I'm not mad at her, but she did contribute to the, she said she used to send her part of her check to the sanitation workers. But my mama's generation made things happen in terms of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Okay, now I'm 50, so I'm knocking on 60's door, right? And now I still got to, like, write books to help to give children a symbol of bravery so that they'll know that they've got to continue the work of King. They've got to continue the work of Rose. They got to continue the work of John McFerrin. They got to continue the work of Hartman Jameson, right? They got to continue to do the work, because freedom is promised. It's never really won. You got to earn it and win it in every generation. Look, Jesus said, ain't gonna be no peace. I'm coming with a sword. A sword. My mama said I say that wrong. Come with a sword. Ain't gonna be no peace unless you bring it. Say it with me. Ain't gonna be no peace unless I bring it. So it ain't gonna be no peace unless you bring it. And so there is now a portion of this sacrifice that has been preserved just for you with your name on it. Every tub has to sit on its own bottom. You've got to now decide, how are you going to walk therein, right? How are you going to participate in this? How are you going to preserve democracy? Look, my gift is writing. I'm not finna march, but I'm finna write these books. I'm finna give children a sign of bravery. But what you gonna do? Maybe you can't write the books. Maybe you can march. Maybe you can make some kind of financial contribution. Maybe you can go to St. James and you can volunteer. I'm volunteering my time on Sunday. I'm going to give a free writing workshop to anybody who wants to write picture books. It's going to be virtual. I'm using my Juneteenth the same way I use my Martin Luther King Day. I'm using it in the service to others. And what do I want to say about Ernest Withers before I close? You know, it's some kind of thing about, like, don't judge a person till you done walked in their moccasins. Ernest Withers used to wear Stacey Adams. So I ain't finna judge Ernest Withers because I wasn't there. I don't know if he was coerced to doing what they say he did. I don't know if he was in such financial straits that he had to do it, because when he talks about Alex Neal and him taking those pictures, and when he talks about him going and he was doing pictures at he was selling pictures for the Negro Leagues, and people would, like, say they were going to buy the pictures and then they wouldn't pay for them, and then he had like 8 kids to feed. I don't know what he was thinking, but I do know this. We would have no documentation of the courtroom without Ernest Withers. We would have no documentation of King and Abernathy on that bus without Ernest Withers. We would have no documentation, a great part of it, the intimate pictures, without of King in Memphis, without Ernest Withers. It is those pictures that often inspired people beyond the community to take action. It's those pictures in Tent City that inspired the people from California to send donations so that the folks could have money to live in those tents. They saw the pictures that Ernest Withers took, their heartstrings were pulled, and they sent donations so that those people could have finances to be cared for. Ernest Withers was my friend. I met him. This is the day I knew him. He had always taken pictures for St. James. So I knew Ernest Withers all the time. I had seen him all the time. But in 2006, when T.W. Northcross was funeralized, and my mama's a good funeral speaker. If y'all need a good funeral speaker, call my mama. My mom spoke at T.W. Northcross's funeral that day. It was like the most beautiful thing. I was like, oh my God, my mom, she speaks so well. And but it was so beautiful because T.W. Northcross was her friend, honey. He used to call my mom Earl the Pearl. T.W. Northcross loved my mama, and my mama loved her some T.W. Northcross. But anyways, at that funeral, Ernest Withers was taking pictures. And I was trying to write this book over here, Memphis Martin and the Mountaintop, this book right here. I was trying to write that book in 2006. And so I was interviewing him, and he said, after the I said, look, I want to interview you. So after the funeral, he said, come on, you can come down to my Bill Street, studio, and you can interview me. So I went down there. He told me about him, Reverend Starks. They both went to Manassas. He told me how when he was in like the 8th grade, Joe Lewis's wife came to Manassas, and his sister's boyfriend had given him a camera. And so he took the camera to school so he could take pictures of Joe Lewis's wife. And once he started taking pictures, they then made him the photographer for the yearbook at Manassas. And he told me all these wonderful stories. He also expressed resentment because people would get those pictures and then not pay him. He expressed resentment because Gordon Parks was getting all the press, but people like seldom mentioned his name in the ilk with Gordon Parks when he had taken yes, you heard me say, he had taken the very first picture of the American Civil Rights Movement, where he showed Mose right saying, there he. But yet he was not getting those same kind of accolades, right? So these are the stories that I gathered from him. And on that very day, I gave him my book. I had written a book called, oh my God, I've kept y'all so much, but thank y'all for listening. I'm gonna let you go. In one more minute, give me one. What the preacher say? Give me one more point. And so he gave me a book that day. I gave him my book. It was an old copy of Everyday People. The National Civil Rights Celebrates Everyday People, right? I gave him my book, so he said, I'm gonna give you one of my books. So he gave me his collection of civil rights pictures, and in that book was the Tent City movement. I had never seen these sad-faced farmers before and their children, never seen them. But when I read about it in 2006, I said, I got to write a book. I got to write a book about this. I did not publish that book until now, this year, 2022. Do the math. That's a long time. I think it's more than 10 years, right? All right. But then look at the prophecy. Remember, my book in 2023 about Coretta, it's going to be about patriarchy, protest, and prophecy, right? But look at the prophecy. I want you to look at this picture real close. Look at the picture real close. We on Bill. Remember when Memphis Flyer, Memphis Magazine, they used to have these where you could open it up and get I think they call it the playbook or something. But anyways, Ernest Withers and I were standing in front of one of those little kiosks. And what does it say here? What that say? Y'all see that? By my arm. It say book. That's what it says, book. So the prophecy of writing books has been on my life. And then it's a little rose there. I don't know what that sentiment is, but I'm assuming it's some kind of sentiment. But it means it's cosmic to me. It's cosmic. It's cosmic. And so because it's cosmic, I always say Ernest Withers is also one of my cosmic companions. Ernest Withers and the Civil Rights Movement, 1955, 1968. What did Mother Opal Lee say we should do? That for Juneteenth, we should have reflection. We should reflect. And so therefore, I thank you for spending your time with me, allowing me to reflect on my friend, Ernest Withers and the Civil Rights Movement, 1955 through 1968. If you did not enjoy this presentation, don't talk to me about it. Talk to Rich about it. He's the one that invited me. If you are interested in writing picture books for children, my service for the Juneteenth is I'm doing a workshop this Saturday, the 18th, 12 o'clock for anybody who is interested in.
Where's that going to be?
It's gonna be virtual. It's gonna be online. So you gotta go.
How do they, we had a question from Elder Perry. How do they get information on the Sunday writing workshop? Can they find it through your website or?
Yeah, right here. It's right here where it says esopwriters.com. They can sign up there. It's going to be Saturday, June the 18th.
esopwriters.com.
And if you want to purchase books, if you want to purchase any of my books for children, just go to my website, Alice Faye Duncan. You can see the titles, and then you can go and purchase them from wherever books are sold.
Okay. Thank you so much. Couple of virtual comments. Gil Scott, who's always good for a nice quip, who was tuning in from over in Europe. He said, I bet Ms. Duncan was a firecracker of a teacher. It's 20 to 1 a.m. where he was, or they are, and there's no danger of me nodding off. She's riveting. So, and Elder Perry says, great presentation. Alice Faye Duncan is truly a true Rio. And John Markley says, enjoyed it greatly. Thank you. So.
Thank you. Now I gotta get off this phone. So are there any more questions, comments? Because now I gotta go see what my mama is saying so she can give me the real evaluation of how well I did. Because only
all right. Thank you so very, very much.
Great one, everybody.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
It was. Thank you. Thanks again to her, and thank you everyone who tuned in virtually and here in person.